Now we can get started, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Could you do the opening statements for the Finance Committee meeting on June 29th, 2026?
Absolutely. And then would you like me to go right into a roll call after that because there's no more
Please
ceremonials?
go right. Yeah, right
Okay.
into the roll call. Much appreciated.
All right. It's June 29th, 2026 at 4:02 p.m. This is the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other categories protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmarczak@capecod.gov, call 508-375-6646, or visit capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and all that information is also available on capecod.gov. Mr. Chair, I'm going to do a roll call as you asked. I believe first we have Deputy Speaker Friesel.
Here.
Delegate Gallagher, are you here? Delegate Gallagher.
He's muted, but he's here. Oh, he's here.
He was on the screen.
He's not here if he's muted and not answering, so we'll have to sort that out.
Oh, wait, he's on the screen. Yeah.
Nevertheless, we need some kind of indication that it's a live person there. Are you?
There
Oh,
he is.
great.
I am
Perfect.
here.
All right. And a little glitchy. So Delegate Killian is not here, as you've indicated, or Vice Chair Killian, as you've indicated, Mr. Chair. When Delegate King arrives, he can take Delegate Killian's, or Vice Chair Killian's spot. Delegate O'Malley?
I'm here.
And Chair and Dean Oman.
Here.
So that is four, which is a quorum, and hopefully Mr. Delegate Gallagher, the gentleman from Eastham's not having problems with his camera, and he can keep it on while the meeting is going.
So, am I here as an alternate, or am I?
No, you're
a full member
of this one. Yeah.
Oh, not according to the agenda.
Oh no! Did we get no? The agenda I have has you as a full member.
I have you as a full member here too, right into the Deputy Speaker Friesel.
Yeah, you're a full member, sir.
I'm sorry. This is the governmental affairs. Is the agenda?
Nope, this is no. Okay, no, good. You're scaring me for a second. All right.
Where are we?
We're so busy, guys. I'm going to disappear. I think you're in good hands, Mr. Chair. We're all set.
Okay, thank you. So we've gone through the two. This is going to be a wide-ranging discussion. I'll read it specifically so we can start. And I'm grateful to see Administrator Dutton here with us. Discussion regarding a potential resolution to be submitted to the full assembly of delegates by Standing Committee on Finance, recommending guidelines to the Board of Regional Commissioners to be issued to the Regional Administrator for preparation for the proposed FY 2028 operating and capital budgets under the Home Rule Charter Section 5-2 and 5-6. It's a wide-ranging thing. I'm going to take advantage of this and turn this over right now to Deputy Speaker Friesel, has had great conversations about this. The focus is, what message do we want to give about the budget FY 2028 before they start the budget process, and give them some guidelines that we would like to see. Deputy Speaker Friesel, can you continue?
Well, I'll try to at least set some framework for this discussion.
So as I see it, and this is, just again, folks, this is not any kind of formal complete plan by any means. Okay, I'm just throwing out some thoughts about what we've been doing and where we're heading when we see the projections. We could do business as usual. Business as usual would mean that we can stop meeting and wait until we get a budget from the commissioners and the administrator sometime in January of 27. And then do what we've done in the prior years about that budget in terms of our review of that budget. Or we could try something different. And as I see it, if we're going to weigh in on some guiding principles that we would like to see reflected in the budget for FY28, which I think would carry over in many ways to the years 29, 30, 31, which is the period we've been given some projections from the finance director, then it seems like we would need to adopt a resolution. The resolution would be by the Assembly, something this committee would compose and would recommend to the full Assembly, something adopted by the Assembly before September, before the administrator starts to send guidance and instructions to the department heads. Would be probably the best time to do that if we're going to do it. And the resolution would be more or less our opinion. It's the opinion of the Assembly. I mean, we are not the ones who instruct the administrator. We don't instruct the board. The board, under the charter, instructs the administrator, who then carries that out through the department heads. So we're not instructing anybody. We would be merely making some recommendations or in suggestions. It's our opinion that this would be the guiding principles. And if we see a budget that reflects them, good. If we see a budget that does not reflect all of them, then we would compare, what didn't happen to what we at least thought would be the right idea back when we put together the resolution and deal with it. At the end of the day, under the charter, it's the Assembly that is the appropriating body.
Good to see you.
I'm getting some,
Hey, Jim.
Man,
okay.
when you were on the call.
And it's the Assembly that has the power of the purse, controls the purse. So at the end of the day, we're the ones who will have to approve what is put together for FY28 in the years following that. So the idea for our meeting today would be to see whether, in the first instance, this committee wants to go in that direction. And whether the committee would prefer a business as usual approach, or the committee thinks it's actually premature for us to weigh in on the potential FY28 budget in subsequent years that show deficits accumulating. But if we do think we'd like to try to put some kind of resolution together that I've outlined, then I think we need to start to put our heads together of the kind of guiding principles that ought to be considered in this resolution, and what additional information we still need in order for us to put together what we think would be a satisfactory resolution with guiding principles. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, and just open it up to see how people react to that.
Well, in our last discussion, we talked about new hires being judiciously looked at if necessary, and if there's a retirement, it can be filled in other ways than hiring a full-time staffer again. We want that. We were looking for ways to avoid, and I think that the administrator is on board with this. We're looking for ways to avoid the projected deficit even as early as next fiscal year 2028. So that's our goals. How can we go save money? And one of the things we came up with hiring, salary, and benefits in general, steps and all the factors within the benefits packages. And then secondly, in another whole thought process, we want to come up, and the administrator has been thinking about this too. We want to come up with what is the county's core mission. Do we have parts of county government that we don't need anymore or we can't afford anymore? And how can we deal with that? Because there's personnel involved. There's a lot of moving parts here. So but the general idea for the rest of this of the committee, the general idea is to come up with a thought process that we can present to the assembly, and hopefully the assembly will present it to the administration regarding these matters. Is there anybody else with a specific thought process that would like to continue from there of the four members on the assembly finance committee? I think you muted Delegate O'Malley, but I think you want to speak.
Yeah, I can't figure out where the raise the hand button is. But, I have a feeling there's going to be a little bit of kind of random thoughts and recollections, but among them is the notion that in any case where we are paying off a loan, where we're paying interest on a loan, and we could actually pay that loan off out of our reserves, we should do it because we're always going to be paying more interest than we're going to be getting on the reserve. So that's one little piece, but it seems to me it's part of a bigger picture of how we approach the budget. Look for those areas where we're paying down loans.
Thank you.
I'll leave that.
Okay, we would need more information from the finance director to know exactly which loans would be most possible or most productive. Okay. Anything else, Delegate O'Malley? No. Okay.
That's the one that comes to mind. I'll come back.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Deputy Speaker Prizell, please.
One area I've spent a fair amount of time over the weekend looking at, I think needs to be taken into account in this planning, is our reserves. Okay, we in stabilization funds, as we look out into the next 28 through 31, clearly we're headed to a tension point here between the continuation of our FTEs as they're currently constituted and what we're paying them, and we know we're going to be paying them more because it goes up every year. So the tension is between the FTEs and the compensation of the FTEs. And when I use the word compensation, I mean all the total package, wage, salaries, benefits, the total package. And looking at those numbers, plus what are really huge numbers on the capital side we can't avoid, which is the facilities, capital improvements, deferred maintenance, and the PFAS, which we're stuck with, okay? Big numbers, but we've also put aside big numbers. I mean, I calculated reserves right now, total reserves, I mean, in stabilization funds. So that includes these, the undesignated fund balance plus capital, something we've called the capital stabilization fund, the revenue stabilization fund, the general stabilization fund, the emergency stabilization fund. And I've read all the ordinances creating those, and for a separate discussion is whether we continue all of those at this point. But when you put all those together, I get a total fund balance of $54,358,000 and change. We put a fair amount of money aside. And so what I am not clear about is how we utilize those reserves and stabilization monies to get us through this current period where we are hit with a lot of bills due on capital. We have money for that. We don't need to rely solely on the operating budget revenue source that we see in the projections. I don't see in the projections the use of some of these monies. We put them aside for a reason. We knew there would be these capital expenses coming down the road. And so I think we need to take that into account when we start looking at the budget for these years. The utilization of the monies we put aside and how we utilize them to get us through this. And I can't give you a complete answer to that because we're still trying to get our arms around some of the potential exposure here. But the numbers that have been thrown, I've seen the reports, the budget reports, $45 million for PFAS. And by the way, we also have a PFAS stabilization fund, a PFAS fund, and we also have an OPEP fund. So there's two more, all right, that we've got money in. So we've got 45 million there, and then I see in the capital improvement program report that was put out this year that we're looking at another $30 million in deferred maintenance. 20 million of that would be reimbursable at some point from the Commonwealth. 10 million would be on our dime. So to me, what needs to be taken into account in looking forward is when are those monies going to be needed to pay for those things, and how does that help us in terms of reducing what otherwise looks like larger numbers as an operating budget deficit?
That's excellently stated. What do we need from the county administration and finance director to go forward with that, do you think?
Well, for me, looking at the budgets that were projected by the finance director, there's a line called debt service, and there's numbers associated with debt service. I'd like to know what those debt service numbers represent in terms of principal and interest on what debt amount. I don't know what that is. And so it's hard for me to say more about it, but certainly that's a piece of information I would like to know. And then, at least as to the immediate year, FY28, what we know, if we do know right now, what we're going to need to spend on capital in FY28 and how we finance that. We have a guideline, a financial policy guideline of no more than 10% of the operating budget being spent on debt service. Maybe we use that as a guide and say, okay, we spend 10% of operating, but everything that exceeds 10% of operating expenses, we dip into our stabilization funds. That's where we use them to get us through this. So I would need to know those things to try to put some more, fixed guidance on the use of those funds.
And that's information we do not yet have. And
I don't have it, no.
Can you say one more time? I might have missed it. Is it by statute that we can only have less than 10% spent on capital?
No. This is purely our own policy. We have no
It's our
statutory.
policy, yeah.
It's our policy. There's no statutory limitation, no.
And as with the law background, is that something that we could change? The county could change if we came to an agreement on that.
We could. However, what I think also we have to take into account is how that might affect our bond rating. And I mean, that seems more than any statutory limitations. It seems as if the limitations are more geared towards what's going to keep us with a high bond rating.
Yeah, thank you. Because I know that the administration and Director Dutton has really worked hard to get that bond rating.
Yes.
It was double A plus, and that
Right.
we haven't borrowed money from it yet. But if we want to borrow money, it's nice to have that in your pocket.
Right.
That
Right.
rating in your pockets, and then but going forward, that might be one of our goals is to borrow money for these incredibly expensive capital things that we have going. So yeah, okay, that's great. That's one person. We have Doc has already spoken. Delegate Gallagher, you have anything that you'd like to say?
Nothing specific at this time. I'm glad everybody's staying on top of this. That's great.
Thank you. Okay. The other discussion that we've had, and it's really an interesting and Assistant Director Vera Herrick said very specifically that, and I know that if Delegate Killian was here, he would have a different opinion than me. But fooling around, like reducing the COLA or reducing the step raises and reducing other benefits like that is not an answer. It might be a warning shot that we're in trouble that we did that. I mean, but the money that would come out of that is not going to solve our problem. But does anyone have an opinion on directionality of tinkering with benefits? I know, first of all, we're just suggesting. We can't do this. This is an administrative factor. But to me, I don't. I'm not sure that that's the direction we need to go in. I don't think that that's something that would stabilize staff unity, stabilize staff involvement in their futures. But I would love to hear from anyone on our committee that is, well, actually, uh, Deputy Speaker Frizell, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, my thoughts about wage and salaries are, and it's going to be more of a general nature, rather than tinkering with a COLA, a step, a merit adjustment. I think that the approach should be to be competitive in our total compensation package, so we can recruit top talent for the positions we have available. So I think we would want to keep the greatest number possible of FTEs that we can at the right compensation levels to do the things we need to do as a county. And it's more important, in other words, to pay the right amount of money, provide the right kind of fringe benefits to get the right people to do what we really consider to be essential for the county to do, rather than try to just spread the pain in some arbitrary way and say nobody gets COLAs, nobody gets steps. Everybody's health insurance is shifted to 50-50. I mean, regardless of what that impact is, so that we can try to just preserve every single FTE. But I wouldn't, again, I keep coming back to this, before I can talk about, or at the same time that I'm talking about that, which is a major driver, there's no question, when you look at the increases we've seen over the last 4 fiscal years in fringes and salary and wages, which I calculate somewhere in the neighborhood of 41%, 31%, right? Looking forward at that kind of compounded rate, we can't accommodate all that and accommodate all this capital. But I can't answer how much capital we can accommodate until I know how much we spending there and how we use the reserves we have there, because we do have reserves to spend on that.
So you're coming right back to square one with that, and I agree with you. We have to know more things about what available money we have to do this and how we can save by using the stabilization and capital funds. Yeah, and I agree with you about tinkering around. First of all, it's not our job, but we can suggest if we wish. If the assembly wishes to do that, we can.
Now we're down to these three. Okay.
We have all the noise that I'm not sure.
So you thought I was gonna immediately go for that one?
I'm not sure.
Doc, I think you've got to mute Delegate
I
O'Malley.
don't know why. I don't know why.
Up at the top, your mic button. Thank you.
I think he wants to speak, Doc. Do you want to speak?
Let me
Well, now,
recognize,
now
yeah.
you're muted. Okay.
No, now I'm unmuted, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we've heard that on this issue of benefits, that the value to us, the monetary value of trimming COLA, trimming steps is relatively small. It's likely to be that the biggest money is in the health insurance. We're now we spend about, well, last year was 2.06, a little over 2 million on our active employees and nearly another million on our retirees. I don't know that we could change the retirees, but there's probably the biggest bang for the buck to be had there in changing the distribution, the spread, the sharing. And that has, if any advantage I can see to it, is that's driven by what everybody understands is going on. That's not something that's coming out of the black depths of our heart. It's a reality about the cost of health insurance that we may not be able to afford to be as generous as we were. I think that's more saleable. And I think we need to keep that on the table and figure out, what that might be able to save us.
Okay. I'm writing that down. Okay. So benefits, we have a sort of an idea that what we may or may not suggest to the assembly and discuss, and then whatever that the assembly majority wants to do, that we can send that on to the administration as suggestions. Once again, I mean, we're all in the same boat. At some point in time, if we can't afford this, we're going to have much more deep problems with staffing it off. And I've lived through 2 of those in my tenure here, so I know it's not not possible. It could very well happen. And our finance director has predicted it's going to happen. So that being said, I think what this is probably we need other help with that from the administration to make these decisions. And it really goes back to Deputy Speaker Freisel's thought process on knowing what is available in the stabilization and capital funds. And that's a good thing to ask for, and through Owen, we'll get that to the administration. Thank you. There's a second line of thought process that we can think about, and we can probably go through the committee structure to determine what are our core mission. What is the core mission of the county? Is there something that really we can't do anymore? Something that we are not meant to continue, or anything to that effect. You know, this is not a question we're going to answer, but this is a question that I think that we as the finance committee should go back to the speaker, and through the speaker say we should put this into committee structure, and each appropriate committee can discuss each individual part of county government that we have. Like, you know, you name it. I mean, I love the fact that we have 7 towns on IT. Is that our core mission? Is that something we can afford to do? Is that something that's been fully addressed? And we have that rate study coming up, and that will be helpful too. So as long as that rate study is going along smoothly and gives us some time to look at too, that will help. But what is our core mission? And are we fulfilling it? And can we afford to be as broad of a government as we would like to be, because we have a flat revenue source? So any thoughts on that from the committee? Delegate O'Malley, please.
Well, I hate to belabor the obvious, but if we think about our core mission, we've got Children's Cove. We are the only county in Massachusetts that runs such a thing. I don't mean that we need to dump it, but talk about that's not exactly our core mission. It's not a county's core mission. It's a good thing. It's an important thing. I support it, but it's got to be on the table when we talk about what are we doing that maybe we shouldn't be trying to manage.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're totally enwrapped in Children's Cove, and they do wonderful work. But you're right, we're the only county that produces any kind of significant money to a CAC. We are the only one, and we certainly the only one that provides a building at our cost.
That's right. You know, I don't know how we disentangle. I don't know how we get the sheriff to pick it up, but
it's
still,
the DA. DAs,
the DA,
not sheriffs. Yeah,
the DA,
and Cape Cod Healthcare. You know, they've got a very deep set of pockets, and other counties use healthcare as part of it too. Some of it's private funding, but we are unique in Massachusetts. Of the 12 CACs, we're the only one that is a significant benefactor to a CAC. And besides that, we actually provide them a building that they would like to expand at some time in the near future. So, so that's one piece of the core mission. And again, I'm not picking on anyone. I think that what I'd like to do is perhaps we can send that over to Health and Human Services, Delegate O'Malley, and your committee can talk about it and see if they have any ideas, solutions. Remember, this is all going to be suggestions to the administrators. And I think we're both on the same line. We want county government to survive, and we've been told very dramatically that we're in trouble financially going forward if everything stays the same. So, Deputy Speaker Preisel, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think if we're going to look at core mission, then I agree with you that I don't think that should be like the finance committee alone looking at that.
Right.
I think we need to involve the other committees in that process. And so I would say that if this committee thinks that's what we need to look at right now, then I think we should proceed along the lines you've suggested, which is to ask the speaker to see if we can assign some of this examination to other relevant standing committees. I don't think it should be just the finance committee that weighs in on that very important global issue.
And again, you know, we really don't know what the FY28 budget. We don't know what the registry is going to produce. on the plus or minus side. We also don't know what the federal government might change. They tried to attack AmeriCorps last year, and we successfully thwarted that effort on their part. But we don't know of the 12 million or so dollars that we get from the federal government in one way, shape, or form is critical to our future. Those are we have a flat revenue source, and maybe one thing we could look at as the summer goes on is do we have any options to increase our revenue significantly? One of them that I've always thought of is, and I've mentioned it frequently, is that the NACO, the National Association of Counties, is a very, very interesting agency. And we, as far as I know, and Mr. Dutton is here, as far as I know, we don't participate in that. I know that the last county commissioner that actively did that on his own dime was Bill Doherty. And he said it's amazing what we are treated the same at NACO as the county commissioners from Orange County in California. We're a county, and as evidence of that, look what happened when we got the ARPA money. They allocated $82.6 million to Barnstable County, gave the towns half and gave us half, because federal government considers counties a very viable source of action that the federal government can support. So maybe that's something we could do. From what I understand, the representative to NACO does not have to be a county commissioner or a county employee. It can be an assembly member. You can allocate anything you want. So maybe we should think about putting that in a budget line item, or suggest that be a budget line item to say, send a representative to NACO. I know that each of the county commissioners, and I'm sure Administrator Dutton gets the same thing. I think they get a monthly NACO what do you call it, newsletter. So I mean, that's an interesting way to look at possible additional grant money, possible federal dollars that can come our way through NACO. I've not gotten anywhere with my thought process on that, but I've asked over the years and years why we don't have a bigger connection to NACO. Any thoughts? Administrator Dutton. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the NACO piece, I obviously been listening to the meeting, and all these thoughts are very helpful, quite honestly, and we'll get you the information concerning some of the funds as you need. But just on the NACO piece, I agree. NACO is very helpful. They've been very helpful. Certainly helping me adjust to my new role. I keep saying I'm the new guy, and I'll continue to say that for probably 5 more years. But they have been very helpful, and the staff is obviously very knowledgeable about what goes on Capitol Hill and federal legislation. So we do have some interaction with NACO. Have not been to their annual conference. But day in and day out, they are quite helpful. So I didn't want to let that go by without just letting you know that we do have some interaction, and they are helpful.
But do you think that there's a possibility that it would be beneficial to go to the conferences? Either I don't know if it's all in person now, or if it's not. I don't. I really don't know much about what NACO is in 2026 as far as our county goes. The relationship that we can forge with NACO.
So they have obviously individual staff that we reach out to. They have monthly meetings just to track federal legislation and what's going on in the federal government. Excuse me. And then they may have quarterly meetings, I'm not sure, but they definitely have an annual conference, which I have not been to one, so I don't know the value of them, but certainly the value I get on a monthly basis, and whenever I have a question is very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And I would, on the other hand, but this is kind of free thought. This is not something that I've got on a piece of paper, but it may. Instead of revenue enhancement, they probably have expertise and people on staff that can prevent federal cuts by utilizing certain measures. And so that might be just as important as looking for additional revenues, protecting the revenue that we already get. And that's another thing, a reason we could probably have a stronger relationship with NACO. And I'm glad to hear that you do already have that. have a relationship. I didn't know that we're not privileged to that information, nor should we be. So, have you thought about that? Is that part of a process that might help us protect the money that we do get from the feds, and they have methodologies of making sure that we don't get cut?
So certainly, I think, if you ask any of the department directors, they're all involved in their trade groups, so to speak. And those trade groups or advocacy groups are very active in DC, especially over the last couple of years. Particularly Health and Human Services, the Health Department, very active when it comes to fighting for federal funding. A good example of that is the AmeriCorps program. Obviously, you remember it was sort of arbitrarily cut soon, and very soon in this current administration. The advocacy groups really gelled and put on a full press effort to get that restored, including lobbying and lawsuits. In between those two things, happily, that funding, good chunk of that funding was restored. We've got some very optimistic news that can't be announced yet, but I think it's going to be quite helpful for our AmeriCorps program over the next 3 years. So that's just an example.
That's
But
a
yeah.
shining example of what county government does for regional projects is AmeriCorps. And you probably know that many of the towns have employees in the county have employees from AmeriCorps. They got sand in their shoes, and they're young, aggressive, well-educated, and well-experienced people living on Cape Cod because of AmeriCorps. I must admit my bias. I've been the assembly appointee to the advisory board for like 15 years now. So I have a special interest in AmeriCorps, and I've watched how well they do and how amazing the group is, and I'm glad that we got that, and I'm glad to hear there's a pending good news there too. But that's just another example of what maybe the NACO can do for us. If AmeriCorps is one example, there may be more examples that we can take advantage of by a more integral relationship with NACO. It's a free thought of mine, but it's been on my mind for a long time. I see Delegate O'Malley. No, I don't.
You see me, I wasn't raising my hand, Chair.
Okay,
I'm
right.
really struggling with equipment here. I just got my image back.
Okay. Okay, any other thoughts on revenue enhancements or revenue protection that we can discuss and bring to the full assembly for any thoughts? I'm again, it's a little bit of an opening volley of this whole thing, so I'm looking for anybody else's opinion on any of this or other angles at the 2028 budget thought process. Okay. All right. What's the next thing we should be asking the administration, Deputy Speaker Friesel? We should be asking them for the intricacies of the stabilization and capitalization funds and how available they are.
Yeah. I mean, for me, first of all, I started off saying, do we want to go in the direction of crafting a resolution? Didn't get an answer to that. I mean, so I'm kind of working with, well, folks, is that the direction we want to head? Do we want to head in the direction of trying to put together some kind of resolution in the next couple of months, and have something the assembly adopts to send over to the commissioners and the administrator? Because that's what we would be. That's what all this work we're putting in would lead to, it seems to me. But I don't know whether other people think that's the direction we ought to head or not. I mean, so I'd be interested to know whether other people think that's what we should do. And if so, then we'll put our heads together on what additional information we need, and then put our heads together after gathering that information on what should be the components of this resolution. I mean, I have a few of them in my head, but I need to know where the committees, where people on the committee members stand on this.
Okay, I didn't realize you wanted a raising of hands for that. I'm absolutely with you on this. I think we need to put this together. We need to spend some time together, and we need to try to come up with a plan. And again, as Administrator Dutton is here, we're on the same team with this. We want the county to survive. We don't want to spend ourselves into oblivion, and find ways to reduce our expense side and protect our revenue side, and maybe even enhance our revenue side. So I'm all in. If you want to raise a hand, that's two. And I know that Delegate Killian is very likely to say the same thing. So there's three. And welcome. He just left. He was here just a moment ago. Maybe he is. Welcome, Delegate King. Have you had any thoughts on what we've been talking about going forward and suggesting focused suggestions on what we would like to see in or out of the 2028 budget?
Well, I just got on, so I'm a little bit behind the eight ball here in what you have been discussing. But I guess listening to just what Carl was just saying a little while ago, I think we should be as aggressive as we can be in terms of saying what we believe is the right thing to do. I mean, why shouldn't we do that?
Thank you for that. There's two other members here. Delegate O'Malley, have you a thought on answering Deputy Speaker Freisel's request?
That request being
Should we
fleshing
go
out
forward with this?
a resolution. I think we have to. I don't see how we can avoid going forward with it. I feel like what we're doing here is sort of throwing ideas together, and I think we have to go from that point. I mean, right now it's just coming up with, it's brainstorming.
Yes.
What are the possibilities? Where could we go? And I think that the next step becomes attaching some numbers, some
Getting some
ballpark
key
numbers in any
information
event.
through the speaker and through our clerk to the administration, getting that information back again, so we can actually put our thoughts in a more numerical pattern, that would make sense to us. But
Right.
so I think this is a good meeting. We don't have to be here for 2 hours to discuss that, but as long as now that's four of us, if I can assume Delegate Killian is on board with us, that's a super majority of the Assembly's Finance Committee. To answer your question, Deputy Speaker Freisel.
Okay, then for me, a helpful next step for me to know how to compose some kind of, the component parts of such a resolution would be to understand the debt service numbers that are in the projections that were produced last December by the Director of Finance for FY 28 through 31. I need to understand how that number is generated. It's generated by some assumptions as to what debt is going to be floated. So I think I need to get my arms around that, because to me, that's a really big number in each of those years, contributes a significant amount to the increasing deficit. And I just want to understand whether there's an opportunity for us to use one easy revenue source right in our hands, which is our capital stabilization fund.
Yeah. So, agreeing with that, I know that Administrator Dutton is here, and he said he could bring us some information. Anything we ask for, we could get. So that's a very big step forward too. Administrator Dutton.
Nope, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate whatever this committee needs, we'll package the material together and get it to you.
Yeah. Is there any early thought process of the administration on looking at the FY 28 budget? Are you already looking at it with the finance director and coming up with your own plans to reduce deficits? Have you thought of it in those specific terms?
Generally, yes. If you were to talk to the finance director, she would tell you that we're constantly monitoring both our expenses and more importantly, in this instance, our revenues. We want to see if there are trends developing in revenues. We work very closely with the Registry of Deeds to track our revenue as it comes in month to month. We check it against prior years, month to month. We check it against last year. And we just want to make sure that we're tracking exactly where either better or exactly where we thought we would be on a month-to-month basis. And the good news is for FY26, which is just about to come to a close. I hope everybody's going to have a New Year's party, fiscal New Year's party, but that's only something I do, I guess. But it looks like we're in a good place for closing out FY26. And obviously, we try to keep track of economic trends, a whole assortment of indicators that Carol looks at. We have been working with the commissioners. Commissioners have made a point of going out into the communities that we visit. We were in Bourne this morning, and making sure that they get input from the communities about what county services the communities really want, what county services the communities don't want or don't use. And I think developing that data, it's going to take a little while as we get to all the different communities and we collect that information from select boards as well as my counterparts in the manager's offices. But once we get compile that information, we'll have a much better sense of what county services are really, really critical, what county services may not be needed, and the county services that may need to be built up. And I think I very often use procurement because we've got several towns that have really reached out to the county looking for additional procurement help. We do an excellent job. Our procurement director is extremely good at what she does, and we've had towns reach out and ask for help, both on just regular daily procurement as well as some more specialized procurement projects. So once we get all this information back, and the commissioners can sort of digest it, and I think they'll have some ideas about what programming we really want to focus on and what programming we may be done with. So I think that's going to be a really important part moving forward, really important part for the county as we move forward. We want to make sure that we're being responsive to the needs of our member towns, and that in terms of long-term viability, I think that's critically important. So we do. This very long answer to your short question about what are we looking at, and have we really started looking at our FY27 rather our FY28 budget, and that's a constant process, and that constant process involves really keeping track of our revenues as they're coming in and making sure we're tracking properly. Also making sure that we're not overspending our budgets, and I think you've seen over the last couple of years we're really good about making sure that we don't overspend our budgets. And in most cases, our department heads who are well seasoned will be returning money at the end of the year, and that's not common. And so I give them a lot of credit for that.
It's actually common in the county. They've been really good about that over the course of years. To their credit and your credit, it's continuing to do so. But one of the things that we approved, and gratefully so, is the rate study that's coming up. And you said that was a fairly straightforward process that won't take very long. If that rate study indicates that we can charge more for dredging, which I think should be on the table. I mean, if we can't do dredge, the counties, 14 of the towns on the Cape are in big trouble because they can't get somebody off Cape coming down here. Never mind even for full price. So that's one of the regional things that we're great at, and lab studies and the PFAS studies and stuff like that. I know that to me is very significant because just by telling the towns that if you want this service, this is what it's going to cost you. I don't know if the commissioners, when Bourne, and you must be almost halfway through that, the towns.
Nope, we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
I think we've been to 4 towns.
Oh, really? I thought it was more than that. I know that Dennis is sometime around Thanksgiving, you know. But anyway, but the rate study will help us a lot too, to think about the viability of keeping revenue sources in line with what we need to have to keep that going, you know. So
So with your indulgence, I'll just sort of expand on the indirect rate study. It's got a couple of different really important critical points to it. One is what you just mentioned, making sure that when we charge for services that we know what our service costs and we know what we're charging out, and we make a policy decision about whether we want, that particular service to be a revenue positive, revenue neutral, or if we're willing to, essentially, quote unquote, lose money on that particular service. Those are all policy decisions that will be made once we get to the point where we've got this rate study. More important, and what we don't talk about, and I know Carol doesn't really talk about it at great length, but it's the rates, the indirect rates that we know. Once we have this study in hand, we can negotiate with the federal government on indirect rate reimbursement. So that right now, we generally charge what basically a de minimis, which is 10-15%, depending on whatever the grant is, of the grant for overhead. One of the things Carol has really taken hold of is, the overhead that we have tends to be a lot more than 10% or 15% de minimis that we charge, just sort of as a standard. So what organizations do is they do these studies, assuming that it comes back and it shows that our indirect rate is actually much higher than the 10 or 15%. We negotiate with the federal government to increase that rate so that we can avail ourselves of the whatever out of that grant funding, whatever our indirect rates actually are. So, if you look at organizations, I deal a lot with organizations in Woods Hope who do a lot of research. And in some of those cases, you're looking at 46% indirect rate that's been negotiated with the federal government. Do I expect us to be up in that range? No, I don't. But I do expect that once we get through this process, the study will show that our indirects are actually substantially higher than the 10 or 15% de minimis that we avail ourselves of at this point. So two very important pieces of this study will have important long-term effects on county budgeting and county revenue.
And those are quantifiable. I know Carol has talked about that to the assembly. Those indirect costs are very quantifiable, but you have to search them out and do the hard work to make sure that you get reimbursed for all of the spider web of indirect costs that these grants have. Yeah, I know that Carol has talked to us about that in sort of in general terms, but I think that's a really, really good way to go. And if this indirect rate study that we're undertaking is going to help with that. That's not revenue enhancement, but it's revenue protection, and that's sometimes just as important as revenue enhancement. Keeping what you need. So thank you for that. I'm looking to the board. If we have Director Dutton here right now, does anybody at the board have another question? A question. My indirect rate study was my last big question for him right now. It was, when will it be available, and how will that help us going forward in our budgeting and revenue protection? So anybody else on the board for that? I don't want to keep him any longer than we need to. I think I see Deputy Speaker Frizzell. Thank you. You're muted.
I know there's another study underway, which is the compensation study. And my question is, do you anticipate getting that information in time to put together your FY28 compensation decisions for the budget?
That's our attempt, and I hope that we can do that. I'm not, coming out of the compensation study, I'm sure we'll see some adjustments that are going to be necessary. But I'm not expecting, radical changes, because we did the last one about 4 years ago. And so getting on a cycle of about every 3 or 4 years is usually the appropriate cycle. But yeah, that my
Okay.
hope is that we'll have those results back. You know, the bones of it are in place. We've had some changes in job description and positions, so those will have to be updated. But other than that, I think a lot of it's pretty standard.
Okay, thank you.
And when you do that study, you take in like Barnstable County government has a retirement package. Not many private businesses have that. I think it's virtually not unknown any longer. Maybe there's a one or two in the world, but when you do the compensation study, do you take into all of the, because we really treat our employees really well with step rate. I mean, we've talked about. I don't have to go into the details of that anymore, but including retirement and health benefits. That to me it has to be weighed heavily, because we don't want to lose anybody, but we want to say, look, your whole package is this. And I'm sure the compensation study might not say, "Oh, we don't really need you." Oh, you're making too much money. That's not how those go. But
It could.
yeah,
No, that's an excellent question, and it does take into account, the whole package, so to speak. Most of the county's employees are compared against a pool of similar municipal positions elsewhere. So, to pick the finance offices. Well, every town has a finance office. So every, county finances, even though they're slightly different than municipal finances, there's enough similarity there that we have a pool of employees in other towns that we can compare job descriptions and then therefore compare compensation packages. So that's usually how it works. Comparisons to the private sector, if we can't find enough, if you can't find enough municipal comparables, then sometimes you look to the private sector, but you discount and you sort of account for the fact that the private sector is different in many regards from the public sector. So yes, those are taken into account.
now, forgive me for being ignorant. Are you sending this out to a company to do this for you, or with your input, right? So you're giving them all of the input that you want, and waiting till they come back with a package, and then you have a discussion with them saying, "Did you do this or whatever?" Right?
So generally how it works is we do hire a consultant to do it. Doing it internally is sometimes possible, but it's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
But we give it out to a consultant who does this kind of work day in and day out. We give them job descriptions, we give them pay rate scales, matrix, and then sometimes they will ask us for, who are your comparables? And we'll review a whole list of criteria about choosing comparable communities. Obviously, Barnstable County has a hard time comparing itself to the other counties, the other four semi-functioning counties. So most of those comparables will be in the municipal world, and rightly so.
Yeah.
And then they will go out to those communities and they'll get comparable job descriptions and their pay rates and so forth. And then they calculate, averages, they propose ranges, and so forth. So that's essentially how it works. And then they come back to us with a report, potentially recommended job description changes, possibly recommended classification changes, and then proposed pay rates, which is usually a matrix in the government setting, is usually a matrix with grades and then steps. So you have predictable increases over the course of 8 or 10 or 12 years.
That's great. And we're fortunate to have you because you've got a great amount of municipal leadership in that regard, too. The municipal leadership like that. And so, Chair Forrest has been a town administrator and a temporary town administrator, and I think 2 other towns. So he's got a lot of experience that we don't normally have at our hand. So I'm sure that you both will, the commissioners, you will get together and dissect this entire thing and find out how valuable it is and where you should go. You have the final say of what you're going to do about it. They're just giving you some numbers and thoughts.
Well, yeah, the consultant's giving us numbers, and then the commissioners have the final say on how they want to see that. But I think last time they adopted whatever the consultant had come back with after reviewing it, and they felt that it reflected Barnstable County's workforce and accurately, and made adjustments accordingly. I think the adjustments though made during that review probably were a little more dramatic than the ones I anticipated being required in this review, because I think it had been quite a while since a study had been done prior.
I think you're right. Yeah, I remember one being done many years before that one. So thank you. Let's see. I'm pretty satisfied that we've gotten a promise of access to very important information that we need, and it will be up to us and to our speaker and clerk to make sure that we ask you the proper questions, and we'll be doing that forthwith. I think we might have lost Deputy Speaker Frizel. I don't
No.
see him.
No, I'm here.
Oh, good. Wherever you are, my screen has changed. Okay, good. Are there any other questions? If you have, Deputy Speaker Frizel, if you have one, just yell because I don't see you on the screen because of my
Yeah.
screen configuration
Yeah.
right now. I do see.
No.
I do see.
No, I don't have one right now. I think we'll look at some of this additional information, and then, in fact, there was some additional information I saw right before the meeting began from Mr. Dutton, which is the updated version of the financial policies of the commissioners, which might be also shared with other members of the committee. So we have that input as well in putting together our own resolution.
You saw that today?
Yeah, it came in, I think, shortly before our meeting here at 4 o'clock. So I think that's an item which we could share out as well. We could ask the clerk in putting together our meeting agenda the next time to consider that, setting that information up.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we've just crossed the 1 hour mark, which is one of my goals. Never to be firm, but I really thank Administrator Dutton for weighing in with all his valuable expertise. And again, remember, his real job was for what 30 years was in municipal management, right? So I mean, that's what we're comparing ourselves to. No, and,
Well, it wasn't
and by
quite
the way,
wasn't
for
quite 30 years.
no. I thought
My
it
hair's
was,
turning white, but
well, whatever
that
it was,
way.
it's long and valuable to us.
Oh,
And I
thank
think I think Clerk Fletcher just sent us that policy.
Okay,
Deputy
good.
Speaker. I just saw it flash across my screen.
Okay.
So now it's available to us. So with that, if there are no other questions, I will call this meeting to a close. I see no hands.
Nope.
We're adjourned.
Thank
you very much
Thanks,
for
everyone.
everything.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks very much.